So we've been seeing over the past couple days Republicans scramble and Republicans really struggling to reconcile some kind of budget or some kind of plan in order to mitigate an economic collapse. So we all know that the $600 federal extension plan is set to expire. So they have a $600 bonus for unemployment, and that's set to expire today as of recording, Friday. Technically, it doesn't expire till July 31st, but actually, in practice, it only goes for weeks which end on Saturday or Sunday, and the 31st is a Friday. So in practice, it's ending today. It's ending on here today on the, what is today? On the 24th. So that's a really bad situation, and Republicans know it. And they're really struggling to come together for a plan. I mean, Chris, this is a disaster that Republicans can't come together with a plan, and we're seeing Democrats not really pushing an alternative plan either.
Yeah. For starters, I wanna mention one thing that you touched on there, and I know you didn't say this, but a lot of other people keep saying, "Oh, it was an accident that the whole bill happened this way, where they're really losing a week in unemployment." But I'd like to point out, I think it was FDR that said there are no accidents in
Oh
politics. If
no,
something
it's
happens,
absolutely not.
someone planned it that way, right? It was
Oh,
it
for
was
sure.
intended to go that way, absolutely. And then yeah, on top of it, I find myself in a position where I have really no confidence in the Democrats being able to go in and make a deal that is anything other than what they've done so far, which is they get some crackers for the poor people, that we all get to share the crackers and the crumbs, and they set a turkey dinner for all the rich people for Bezos to make $12 billion in a day. I guess I'd rather not see that again. If us getting a Band-Aid means my kids are going to spend their whole life paying back the trillions of dollars that the rich get to enjoy, then I'm not really sure that there's an incentive to do something, unless they really pull it off, right? All of a sudden you start getting the kind of social reforms we're looking for: Medicare for all, free college, reduce the military budget. I mean, if you could get some of that stuff, then that would be important change. But if all you're going to get is a $1,200 check for people that $1,200 is not going to save them, uh, you know,
Yeah. So it's a disaster right now coming from Republicans, and Nancy Pelosi is kind of just saying, "Well, no, we're not going to do anything. If all you're going to do is just extend the $600 unemployment check
right.
to do, a short-term save, we're not going to go with that." And Nancy Pelosi's strategy here is basically saying, well, then there's no leverage to get all the other important stuff done that we need to get done, right? Because if you just extend the $600 thing, we know what you're going to do, Republicans. You're just going to run off with that $600 thing, and that's going to be the only thing that happens. So Nancy Pelosi trying to gamble there, saying, well, we're not going to pass this $600 thing. But, Chris, this goes to a bigger issue, a bigger sort of meta strategy being played out by Democrats right now. So we're seeing, as we all know, Joe Biden basically hiding out. The joke from the Trump campaign is he's hiding Joe Biden, these basement Biden or
It's
whatever.
in the
But
basement.
but like it's kind of true. Like his strategy right now, literally, and we've seen multiple reports that his strategy is don't rock the boat too much, don't make too much noise, let Donald Trump hang himself. Let Donald Trump trip
Yeah.
over his own stuff, trip over his own shoelaces, and mess himself up. And that strategy has been now adopted by the Democratic Party. So they're not coming out actively arguing for specific policies and hoping that, the Republicans screw themselves over. And it seems to be working, right? Because the
Yeah.
Democrats know if they start advocating for this thing, that thing, or the other thing, that then the public is going to divide on the Democrats based on that specific thing, because they'll associate in their mind that policy. And whatever policy it is, no matter how great it is, you might not be able to get a huge majority of the country behind any particular thing, no matter what it is.
Like, if it's working, and the polls seem to be showing it's working. I mean, who knows about polls anymore after 4 years ago? But um, it seems to be working, and we all see the clips every time that Biden pops up and gets on camera. There's some clip that goes around. I mean, it's just weird stuff. I've seen a couple clips in the last couple
Well,
of days where why would any human ever like utter those words? That's bizarre that you would even say something like that. And then it spreads like news, like through the
exactly.
news. But if he doesn't say anything, then we just keep talking about Trump, right? And all the bad
Exactly.
stuff that's happening over there.
And I mean, right, just like you were saying, just the other day, Joe Biden came out and said that Donald Trump is the first racist president, which is absurd. There's anywhere between like 12 and 17 presidents that owned slaves, like literally owned human beings on the basis of race, right? So, like, the idea that Donald Trump is the first racist president, I
Well, and
mean,
even in modern times, you've got tapes of Reagan and Nixon saying
exactly.
horrible things.
Yeah, so
that are not repeatable, that, it's
mhm.
bad stuff.
Exactly. And so it's absolutely bizarre for Joe Biden to say something like this. So for Joe Biden, like we're both in agreement. Like, right, for Joe Biden, I think we do have an agreement that Joe Biden probably shouldn't be in front of the cameras too much. Let Donald Trump trip over his own stuff. He's bound to do it. But there is a question. I do think that maybe we disagree a little bit when it comes to the overall strategy of the Democratic Party. Because, like I was saying, they're adopting the strategy of Joe Biden. But I think that what this means is that they're leaving policies on the table, right? Like, yeah, it might hurt them a little bit in the polls, but at the end of the day, if they can get a few more good things, if they're basically saying, well, we're not going to argue for anything because it could hurt us in the polls a little bit, and our only strategy right now is to focus on winning, and what we mean by winning is just winning more seats. I don't know. I mean, I might agree with you that it might be good tactics, but I wonder about the strategy.
But at what cost? Because the Republicans, like for anything that Democrats want, the Republicans are going to what they're going to demand no liability for COVID. So if companies decide to just not spend money on safety features, there's no liability for that. They're trying to work on a tax cut. They're trying to put a tax cut into this thing. And then the other thing with what they're trying to set the stage to cut Social Security later on,
Well,
supposedly that's,
Chris,
I mean, those are all pretty major things
well,
that I
Chris,
don't know that they're worth a couple small checks.
I hear you there, right? Like I hear you there, but that's not the point. The thing that I'm saying is that like they're literally the Democrats. Their strategy right now is to not argue for anything. Like is to not tell Republicans anything that they want. I mean, it's a typical negotiating strategy, right? Like you don't give them any information about the things that you may or may not want in a bill because then the Republicans have to try to figure out what things you may or may not accept. And so the Republicans end up looking incompetent. The Republicans end up looking stupid. And so the Democrats are basically doing this, foregoing the possibility of arguing for a policy, arguing for a thing which, whatever it is, whatever this thing that the Democrats might be able to argue for, it might not be as far as I would like, but they could maybe argue for something. And I don't think it's far fetched to say that if you go out and make a case for a particular policy, it's more likely to get into a bill. I don't think that's far fetched. If you say, look, well, at the very least, we're going to do this, that, or the other thing, it's more likely to get into a bill. So as I see it, this seems to be basically saying, Democrats saying, Nancy Pelosi saying that, we're willing to put some policies on the table, take them off the
Yeah.
table. We're willing to let a situation occur where we're not going to get as much anyway. But what that means is maybe we'll win more seats in November. I mean, I don't, am I misreading it? That's how I'm kind of
Well,
seeing it.
but when you look at the leadership, right? I mean, what are Pelosi and Schumer going to ask for that really would satisfy people in the Democratic Party that aren't essentially Republicans, anyways, right? I mean, you've got
Well,
that middle centrist group. I mean, if the whole party was made up of AOCs and Bernies, then yeah, you might get in there and try to use this
well,
as
that's
leverage to
well,
get
but see,
Medicare for all, to get college tuition, to cut the military budget. But I don't see Pelosi making that happen.
well, exactly. But that's the thing, though, because all of the Democratic Party is kind of in line with this strategy right now of not saying too much, not really rocking the boat too much, being quiet, not arguing for a specific thing. Whereas you'll remember a few months back, everybody was coming out with idea like when this thing was first happening, when we first saw the shutdown starting to happen, every representative had an idea, or maybe every two or three representatives would come together and they had an idea, had a plan, and it was an explosion of ideas. We saw how bad many of the ideas were, but it was an explosion of ideas in the sense that we really saw new ideas for how to solve things coming out. And right now, we don't see any of that. It's
Right.
dead and it's silent. Everybody's trying to, they're back in their little coves and they're more interested in strategizing than trying to figure out things for the American people. And that's what I'm getting worried about, Chris.
Yeah, and it seems like what we kind of have here is like in this country, like behind the scenes, you don't see it, it's not as obvious, but it's almost like a battle of the think tanks, right? And I think
Mm.
Republicans are better at think tanks than Democrats are in general.
Well, they
So
have a lot more money.
you're right. So when the Republicans hit something like this, well, the Republicans have already been paying a lot of really smart people to work on this for weeks to months, so that
Yeah.
McConnell knows what he's going to do because a lot of the work's been done for him, and he's a smart guy and he can figure out a lot. But he's also had very smart people helping him think about it. I mean, do we? It doesn't seem like we really have as much of that on the left that it is getting Pelosi ready, getting these people
Mm-hmm.
ready. You've got a few progressives that have some good ideas, but there's what, a handful of them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's definitely right. I mean, it probably goes to some way that, Democrats think about negotiations. There's all kinds of books on, trying to explain that stuff to, better or worse degrees. But, the interesting thing, though, when it comes to the Republican side of things is that there's a weird split right now. So, you have people like Rand Paul storming out of a meeting saying that all these GOP people, that they're just Bernie bros now, that they're, talking about spending money in the middle of a bad time, and that means that somehow they're Bernie bros. It's bizarre, the stuff that we're hearing from parts of the GOP. Ted Cruz kind of over there, but also saying that the GOP is a party of the working class now, but also we need to cut Social Security. Mitt Romney also apparently involved in trying to cut Social Security in the middle of a pandemic. I don't see how that's helping anyone. Mitch McConnell basically is like, well, what can we get done? What can we get done? What can we get done and keep people safe? But then also there are some Republicans out there who seem to be trying to warn their colleagues, saying, look, man, if you do this, if you try to cut things right now, if you try to pull back, you're going to destroy the economy and you're going to end up needing to spend a whole lot more in the long run. Plus, not to mention, we're going to get wiped out in the election. So,
And the thing is, Social Security is one of the most popular programs in the history of our country, right? I mean,
and they can't,
it's not like it's
oh,
not like normal people hate Social Security,
it's the
right?
weird. I'll tell. It is the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing because there are a lot of people out there who just in their hearts, and when I say a lot of people, I mean a lot of people in Congress of the Republicans, not of the American people, but in Congress, it is a view that we got to get rid of Social Security. You want to privatize Social Security. That's the aim of things because, I mean, trust me, a lot of people can make a lot of money if you do something like that, if you privatize Social Security. And so there's a lot of interest behind that. And people have been persuaded, right? Like, sometimes there's this, I mean, Chris, I'm sure, we've all had this impetus here to think that, like, well, because there's money behind it, they don't really believe it. I imagine they've just been indoctrinated since when they were little
Oh
kids,
yeah,
and they probably do believe it, right? But they've been
yeah.
indoctrinated since when they were little kids. So there's people out there who are salivating over again trying to cut Social Securities. But I think, Chris, the bizarre thing about this is the attempt to come together with a negotiation, because these are people out there right now who are saying, well, if you're talking about spending money for more checks going out, the only way I'll agree with that is if we're talking about privatizing Social Security. So that's why we're hearing these absolutely bizarre things which are likely to come into it, because there's a lot of people who just don't want to spend any more money. They are deficit hawks, and they're saying, well,
Right.
the only way we'll do that is if we privatize Social Security.
And it's weird to hear those deficit hawks pop up every once in a while. Because when I was younger and I was, being raised in a conservative household, and that was kind of my early view of politics, that's what you heard all the time. It was all about budget, it was all about
Mm-hmm.
deficit, it was all that kind of stuff. And basically, since George Bush, I mean, you'll hear it from Rand Paul and a couple other people, but like that, you just don't hear that because the Republicans spend just as much as the Democrats, if
Well,
not more. I mean,
well,
if you take those wars and you attribute all that cost to Bush, because it wasn't really Obama's wars, right? Like you could say that was a crazy expensive presidency.
Well, not just that. Also, we're in a situation right now where Republicans are in charge. Republicans have the White House,
Right.
and they're still spending a ton of money. They're wasting a
Right.
ton of money, and they don't want to cut anything. They don't want to cut anything. So the deficit
They will in
attacking,
January.
ex-
as soon
they,
as soon as they're not in
as
power, it's going
soon
to
as
be
they're
all
not in
about.
power, it's going to be just like that. And I want to make one quick other point about privatizing Social Security while we're here on the topic. Privatizing Social Security is not a free market solution. Okay, because we're talking about a situation where a bunch of people are being required to buy into retirement, likely from a small sect of private companies. So that's not free market at all. That just means that people are allowed to make money off of it. So
Right.
don't get it twisted, guys. We're not talking about the free market here. We're talking about allowing just a few people to make a whole lot of money off of everybody, because everybody, including me, including you, will have to send a little bit of your paycheck every single time to somebody, and then somebody will get a tiny little slice off of literally no work. That's what we're talking about right now. So don't get it twisted, guys. Nothing to do with free market here. It's absolutely entirely just about a few people making a ton of money. All right, you guys, thanks so much for watching. Guys, go check out Chris's channel. He's got a ton of stuff going on. He's got this new thumbnail, this new logo. He's got this fiery fist. He's got new thumbnails going on all of his videos. Great stuff coming up. And his channel is absolutely blowing up right now. So you're going to want to get in there while he's blowing up. All right, we'll see you all in the next one.